This is the Mercedes Benz S580 and the Porsche Panamera, two cars that compete in the full-size executive luxury sedan market, but do it in different ways. So let's jump in and take a look, starting off with the Mercedes' exterior. It's classic. Leading with a 3-point star, the swoopy and smooth lines of the Mercedes S-Class are unmistakable. It's simple, elegant, and even slightly subdued. On the flip side, the Porsche Panamera takes a different approach. Looking like a stretched 911, the Panamera is aggressive and more angular. Playing to its Porsche bloodline, the design is much more sport-oriented compared to the Mercedes. Now we move to the interior. The Mercedes and the Porsche deployed luxurious interiors in their own way. Both have gone through a massive simplification and reduction in buttons for their current generation and have a heavier reliance on screens to control functions such as the media and the air conditioning systems. The Mercedes interior feels more luxurious, however. From the wood grain on the wheel to the cross-stitch quilted leather on the seats and the use of materials scattered across the interior, the Mercedes cocoons its occupants from the outside world in a simpler and more conventional approach to luxury. Now, the Mercedes' weakness is, in my opinion, the screen layout and the design. The big rectangular shaped screen in front of the driver and the horizontally mounted infotainment system in the center screens look like they were just placed there in the absence of an alternative, and it kind of makes the dash of the S-Class look a little scattered and I guess somewhat out of place. On the flip side, the Panamera's interior looks cleaner, simpler, and more contemporary. The screens are blended into the dash nicely and the layout in the center section is simple and easy to use. The Porsche's weakness? It's not as luxurious as the Mercedes and as one would expect from a luxury sedan. The interior space for the front passengers feel mostly the same in both cars. Sitting at 5'11", I feel comfortable and have plenty of headroom, legroom, and shoulder room. The back seats in the Mercedes feel more spacious, however. Given the longer wheelbase in the S-Class, it's much bigger back there compared to the Panamera, and not that the Panamera is cramped, it's just that it's not as big as the S-Class. Now, given its hatchback-style trunk, the Panamera does have more cargo space, besting the Mercedes with 17.4 cubic feet and 47.3 with the seats folded down. And as a reminder, the Mercedes does not have the ability to fold down its rear seats for more storage room. Now let's get these things on the road and feel the difference behind the wheel. Alright, now we're inside the Mercedes. We'll drive this one first and then we'll switch and drive the Panamera next. So foot on the brake, start stop is here up on the dash. And one of the things about this V8 the S580 has is it is so quiet. There's absolutely no vibration. You can barely tell that the engine is on. Nothing is coming into the cabin. It just adds on to that, I guess, comfort-oriented experience that we're gonna get in this S580. Now, I have driven the S580 before when it first came out, I believe about 2 years ago, and I was very impressed with it. And let me make it out of this narrow area here where there's a bunch of trucks dropping off cars for the LA Auto Show, which I will be covering here in about a week or so. But let's go ahead and we're gonna test the acceleration for the S580. Now, it does have a couple modes. So there's Eco, Comfort, Sport, Sport Plus, Individual. Individual allows you to tailor the steering, the throttle response, and the suspension. This does ride on an air suspension, and for now we're gonna go ahead and put it in Sport Plus. Excuse me. And this engine is a 4-liter twin turbocharged V8. It makes 496 horsepower and 516 pounds-feet of torque. So it's no slouch in terms of numbers. 0 to 60 occurs in 4.3 seconds, and it is connected to a 9-speed automatic transmission. So let's drop it into first. And we're going from a roll at 12 miles an hour. Mash it. A little bit of a lag. Yeah. Oh man, this is such a fast car. So fast for what it is, considering that this car weighs almost 5,000 pounds. Braking there is solid. And yeah, this is a really, really quick car. It's a little doggy there. I don't want to run that thing over. it really moves. It really moves for such a big car. Let's get one more, and then, all right, here we go. So here's the thing. It is very quick, but much like the rest of the driving experience, it still does quick, very smoothly. The engagement experience is not the best, and what that means is that there's very little exhaust noise. The engine noise is barely noticeable. Obviously, it's already very quiet, as I mentioned earlier, when you're just driving it around, or even at idle, you can barely tell it's on. So it even does sport, and essentially in this mode, Sport Plus, very smoothly and calm. It's such a serene and, I guess, effortless experience maybe, but yeah, it's very evident what this car is really about, because even when you put it in sport mode, it's still smooth and comfortable. So I'm going to use that and transition it into the rest of this experience. So as I mentioned, there's comfort, and that's what everybody's going to drive in on a daily basis. So comfort really pillows everything out. It smooths out the edge, and even when I say edge in Sport and Sport Plus, it kind of tightens up the steering, and the suspension does get a little stiffer. But stiff in this should be used relatively to this experience, because even in Sport and stiff, it basically rivals comfort in other non-luxury executive sedan cars. You could still drive it around in sport and mistake it for a luxury car. So in comfort, it really just takes it to another level. Combined with the comfort level of these seats, these are probably one of the more comfortable seats that I've sat in, compared to also the new Range Rover seats, which are the most comfortable seats I've sat in. But yeah, combined with the comfortable seat and the overall pillowy ride that this delivers, it's just, there's a reason why this is called an executive luxury sedan. So meaning you had a long day of work, you came in, and this thing almost relaxes you. You sit in the seat, it's literally like a pillow, and it's heated, it's cooled, it's massaging, and it almost like it relaxes you as you're driving. It allows you to unwind from a long day, and the way it just drives and soaks up the bumps, it's so effortless and so luxurious, so pillowy, and it's, I don't know, there's a reason also why at a certain point where sedans were still reigning supreme over SUVs, the S-Class was widely regarded as one of, if not the best cars in the world. It was the car that would kind of dictate to the rest of the automotive industry, like what's coming, what's next, what are the new technologies that other cars are going to start using. Even beyond what Mercedes would use in their cars, they would just mimic what the S-Class was doing. So it's just a fantastic driving experience. It's, I don't know if it's, I haven't driven the new 7 Series. I have driven an A8. It's second to none in terms of comfort and daily drivability. And this whole executive luxury sedan, it plays the part so well. And it's just, that's the reason why it's the benchmark in this class. So that's it for the Mercedes. Now let's switch over and talk about what's going on in the Porsche. All right, now we're in the Panamera. Let's turn this thing on and go for a drive. Start, stop on the left. So contrary to the Mercedes, the powertrain or the engine makes a little bit more noise in the Panamera. So let's go ahead and get started here. So the Panamera has a 3-liter twin turbocharged V6, and it generates 348 horsepower and 368 pounds-feet of torque. And it's made it to a 8-speed PDK. And 0 to 60 occurs in 4.7 seconds and 4.5 seconds if you equip Sport Chrono. And as a reminder, this is the Panamera 4, so all-wheel drive. I tried to get as close to a comparison to the Mercedes as possible, even though this has a V6, and people will say, oh, why didn't you get a V8 Panamera? Because in order to get a V8 in the Panamera, you have to get a GTS or a turbo, and in reality, I don't think either one of those cars compete with the S580. And even if you were to go with the Panamera 4S, that one's a hybrid, and Mercedes has its own hybrid version of the S-Class, and it just becomes a little bit of a noodle story, spaghetti mix. So now let's go ahead and put this thing in the sportier settings. So unlike the Mercedes, I do have a drive mode controller here that allows me to switch it into sport, and sport changes the drive mode, the chassis, and the overall level. Chassis as in the suspension, how stiffer or softer it is, and then the level of the car, the ride height lowers. Of course, this also has an air suspension like the Mercedes. So this person is just sleeping here at the wheel. We're going to go around him or her, and we are going to go first gear, and now we're rolling at 10 miles an hour and mash it. Okay, so the Mercedes was going a little bit faster there down that same road. Okay, the Panamera pulls adequately. I'm gonna hold my thought here and do one more acceleration pull, and then I'll tell you what I'm feeling here. All right, let's go. First gear, downshift to first. Haha, yeah. The red line is the higher in the Panamera. All right, brakes are good too. All right, so the brake compared to the Mercedes is a lot sportier. There's a lot more bite at the top of the pedal. The power is equal. I would say they're both adequate in terms of braking power. Now, let's talk about the engine and the overall sportiness and the dynamics of this thing. Okay, so I'm going to use three words: dynamic, engaging, and sporty. So this Panamera is more dynamic than the Mercedes, it's more engaging, and it's more sporty or sportier. It's probably the accurate grammatical term here. So let me explain. Even though the speedometer will probably tell you you're going slower in the Panamera, the way this car feels makes it feel almost the same speed, maybe some would argue, if not faster than the Mercedes. So why is that? Well, because the overall experience in this car is a lot more dramatic and a lot more engaging. So first things first, the exhaust note is a lot louder. The engine comes in a lot louder into the car. The suspension and the steering, as I said, when you put it in sport mode, it actually makes a difference compared to the Mercedes. So the steering wheel gets tighter. The suspension drops down. It has two low settings. So it has lowered and it has low. So that just kind of immediately hints at you that this is more of a serious driver car, more driver focused, a little bit more dynamic. And it just, the sporty aspect of this is immediately noticeable, especially, and I was tying the comfort and the sportiness with the Mercedes compared to the seat, and I'm going to do it here in the Panamera as well. So in the Panamera, coming in and getting out of the car is a little bit more challenging than the Mercedes, and that's just because of the way the body structure is of the Panamera. These B panels here are much further out, and the seat as well. And the other thing you'll notice is it's not as comfortable, the seat, as the Mercedes. And the term I'm going to use here is it's not as cushiony as the Mercedes, for the lack of a better term. Is it an uncomfortable seat? No, it is not an uncomfortable seat. It's just not as comfortable as the Mercedes. So from a sporty aspect, this, hands down, it just delivers it differently. Oh, and the transmission, the PDK is underrated in this category, and it makes a big difference in terms of the upshifts and the downshifts, and even here in daily drivability, you can certainly sense the difference, the urgency in the transmission with the PDK compared to the Mercedes. So now, the comfort levels. So I'm back in comfort mode, so drive mode, chassis, and level are all in normal, and this is still a comfortable ride. Is it as comfortable as the Mercedes? No. it is not as comfortable as the Mercedes. I would say it's maybe 80% of the way there compared to the Mercedes. Now, I'm gonna use the drive modes to tie this into the way these two cars feel and ultimately compare against each other in terms of just daily drivability and all this stuff, because that's what people are gonna do with these cars. So you've got normal and sport, okay? And sport for the Panamera, it pushes the levels of sport a little bit further than the Mercedes. It just moves it a little bit further. So in comfort, I said 80 to 20, 80 versus full-on comfort compared to the Mercedes. So if I was to compare the sportiness of the Mercedes to the Panamera, I would say the Mercedes is probably 70% of the way there compared to the Panamera. Now, the opposite end of the spectrum. So in terms of comfort and daily drivability, the Mercedes pushes the boundary of the levels of comfort a little bit further out. So the way the rubber band works is the Mercedes pulls much farther out for comfort, and the Porsche just pulls much farther out for sportiness. So I think that kind of sums it up most accurately. I'm going to end it here and just wrap it up with some final thoughts. So that's the Porsche Panamera and the Mercedes S-Class. Now, both of these cars are great and really deliver on their purpose. The Mercedes is the classic one of the group. It's been around for decades and it truly exemplifies what a luxury sedan is supposed to be. On the other end, the Porsche takes a rather unconventional approach and dials in the highest levels of driver engagement in the class. Ultimately, you can't go wrong with either one of these cars. It just depends on what you're looking for. The all-out comfort and luxury of the Mercedes or the driving involvement from the Porsche. Now, for me, it's a really tough choice because I truly enjoy and appreciate both of these cars. But in the end, I would pick the Porsche because I like the driver engagement and I also like the interior design of the Porsche a little bit better than the Mercedes. So that's all I've got. If you've got any questions, please make sure you leave me a comment down below or send me a message on Instagram @DriveSteady. If you happen to be interested in watching independent reviews of either one of these cars, here's some links for you to watch. Another thank you to Porsche of downtown LA for giving me access to these two cars. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, thank you for watching this video. Until next time, drive steady.